Hello and welcome to the Potty Mouth Preacher, healing women's minds, bodies, and souls, one trigger at a time. I am Lisa Czak, your host. Today we are talking about healing from abuse. We're going to talk about the signs, because usually when you're in an abusive relationship, you don't even realize it. So we're going to talk about the early warning signs, and you're going to get to see me do an impromptu healing session while my guest, April Mather, is sharing a part of her story, and she happens to have a visceral reaction to it, a PTSD response to it, and I heal her, help her heal. Let's be clear on that. On the spot. Stay tuned. As always, I'm going to help you shift gears. So find a comfortable place to sit or lie down. Close your eyes if you're able to. Give me 3 deep cleansing breaths in. Another one. One more, really letting all of that out. Keeping your eyes closed, just notice the temperature of the room on your skin. Notice any noises you might hear either inside or out or on my end. Notice any smells in the room. Notice any taste in your mouth. Notice how your body feels against the surface that you're sitting or lying on. And just notice your breathing, not judging it, just simply noticing it. Do a body scan starting with the toes all the way to the crown of the head. Just simply noticing, are you holding on to any tension? Do you feel anything in your body? Just simply being aware of how your body's feeling right now. Paying attention to your hands. Are they in fists? If so, unclench them. Is your jaw clenched up like this? Unclench your jaw. Are you furrowing your brow? Unfurrow your brow. And if you have any tension anywhere in your body, just simply being aware of it and sending it some love. Now name 3 things that you're grateful for, making sure one of those is something that hasn't happened yet, but you believe if it's in your best interest, it will happen. And take a big inhale and allow that love and gratitude to just flow through your body, seeping into every cell so that you carry it with you the remainder of the day. And now set your intention for how you want to feel, knowing that you and you alone control how you feel. No one else gets to control that, ever. So knowing what you have to do after you leave this experience, setting your intention for how you want to feel when you leave here, how you want to feel during this episode. And see yourself going about your day, living in this intention, feeling this intention, no matter what's going on. So maybe you are feeling a little annoyed after you leave here. Something happens. Okay, I feel annoyed, and I'm still choosing to feel whatever your intention is. We don't want to just throw things under the rug, pretend like they don't exist, acknowledging our real feelings, and then choosing how we actually want to feel. And now I want you to say in your mind, with the energy behind it, your powerful I am statement at least 3 times. Go back to episode 2 if you're not sure what I'm talking about. Whatever follows I am is coming looking for you. So maybe you want to feel peaceful no matter what. I am peaceful. You can look behind me if you want to open your eyes real quick and see different I ams up here. I am determined. I am optimistic. I am grateful. And seeing yourself, feeling, being this I am as you're walking about your day, what people are noticing, what are they saying to you? What is your self-talk like? How does it feel to be living out this I am statement? And now another deep inhale, and just inhaling all the love and gratitude and your intention and your powerful I am statement. Just letting it seep into every cell of your body so you carry it with you the rest of your day. And then slowly open up your eyes and welcome back to the Potty Mouth Preacher, where we heal your mind, your body, and your soul one trigger at a time. Want to know how? Stay tuned. You're going to see me do it in here with my special guest. April is her name. And before I read her bio to you, I want to do celebrations real quick, right? Celebrations are those seemingly insignificant steps that we take along our journey of life that we might forget to celebrate, right? We might not even notice. It's all the evidence that you're actually being the woman that God created you to be, that you're living in your purpose, so when you lay your head on the pillow at night, so you're no longer beating yourself up over all the things you didn't do, coulda, shoulda, wouldas, right? No more of that. No more waking up wanting, pining away. I'll be happy when I can fit into my size 6 jeans again. I'll be happy when I lose 20 pounds. I'll be happy when I meet the perfect guy. I'll be happy when my husband and I stop fighting. I'll be happy when I get a promotion. No, that's no way to live. Noticing all of the things that you actually do that are right, meaning an alignment with your I am statement that I just talked about, your North Star. Every thought, action, decision, person, and behavior in your life that are leading you to being the woman that God created you to be. So my celebration is that I have this book here, right? Portal Tears, Drowning the Demons Beneath the Fat to Keep the Weight from Coming Back. Now, it's been real easy. It wasn't always easy, though. It's been easy for me to own that part of my story, meaning the weight loss part of my story, which is crazy for me to say, because I remember when I was 226 pounds feeling like I don't ever want anyone to know that. Like, all that's in the book, right? All the shame I had carrying all that actual physical weight on my body, right? Little did I know there was a ton of weight internally that I was carrying that caused me to gain the physical weight of 226 pounds. And I never imagined I'd be sitting here saying to you, that's really easy for me to own, right? That I had all kinds of eating issues, emotional eating, that I hid food, right? That I, just felt disgusting in my own body, and it was complete denial, right? I knew how much I weighed. Like, I have a mirror. People can see me, and I thought I was keeping a secret. So that part of my book, it's been super easy for me to just talk about and own and go on podcasts and do talks about and book signing about, right? There's a whole nother story within that story about how I was groomed by a sexual predator that I have not been owning. I have not been owning that at all. And I am just now beginning to own, which is really what kind of kicked off this healing series also, is me acknowledging that I'm a healer, but also acknowledging that I had healing to do, that I still have healing to do, that it's a daily practice, right? It's a moment-to-moment practice, right? I could be fine one moment and then get triggered. Oh, got to heal that. So I am celebrating the fact that I am now no longer living in shame about being victimized by a sexual predator, by a narcissist, by someone who abused me in every single way: physical, mental, emotional, psychological, and sexually. I'm now finally owning that part of my story because I was afraid, even though it's in the book, right? People can read. I didn't even want to write that book. I didn't want to write that part in the book actually because I was like, no, my husband's going to leave me and my family's going to, not talk to me again and people are going to look down on me and especially Christians, right? What are they going to think of me? And I'm just now realizing that you gotta live within your story. Otherwise, you spend the rest of your life hustling for your worth outside of your story. So I'm no longer hustling for my worth outside my story and I'm living within my story. Which brings us to this episode, which is about healing from abuse. I want to start helping women realize, like, what does grooming look like? What does abuse actually look like? Because when you are being abused, when I was being abused, I didn't know I was being abused, right? I knew something was off. I felt off, something was not right, but I didn't want to identify and characterize myself as a victim of abuse. And so today's episode, we are talking about how to recognize the signs of grooming, how to recognize the red flags very early on. Abusers have red flags very early on that we can miss because they send confusing and mixed messages. So we're going to talk about that today with my guest, April Mather. And I'm going to read to you her amazing bio, okay? April is a single mom and a business owner in Ontario. As a relationship and manifestation coach, she spends a lot of her time serving her incredible clients who are learning how to take hold of the life they know is for them, despite any fears they might have. April and her 7-year-old daughter, she's so smart and so cute. You have to follow her on Instagram. April and her 7-year-old daughter love to play with their 2 one-year-old cats and are constantly finding new ways to keep them out of trouble. Just like kids, right? She spends most of her business time on Instagram, sharing content with her audience, offering workshops, programs, and individual consultations, as well as a glimpse into her life behind the scenes and her stories. When you pop by, be sure to send her a message and say hello. You can contact her at aprilmather.xo, which I love that. And her email is april@aprilmather.com. Steve will drop that in the comments and in show notes. So I would like to welcome right now, April Mather. So April, I cannot thank you enough for coming on the Potty Mouth Preacher. And we met through a coaching group that we were in, Tatiana Mikos, and she was in like the last couple episodes. I had her on to kick off the healing series. And as we know, Tatiana was really good at calling us out on not owning it, right? That was the name of her group, was owning it.
Yeah.
And like in my case, I was not owning being a healer. And in your case, she was talking about an abusive marriage that you were in, right? And I remember you did this post and you blew all of us away in that group.
Yeah.
That post was like you're coming out of admitting this actually happened to me. Like this is something that I went through and all that happened for you because of that. So today I want to focus on just your story, your own personal story, because I know there are women out there who sometimes I feel like the word abuse or abuser, tell me if you can relate to this, April, that sometimes it does us a disservice, right? Because we're so busy like looking up, right? Researching what is emotional abuse? What is psychological abuse? Even what is physical abuse, right? That we forget that it's really about, do we feel safe or not? Like we know, like in our bodies, right? What's going on? Or the term narcissist, right? I don't know if the person you were married to is a narcissist or not. It doesn't matter, right? Is the point. Like I experienced narcissistic abuse. I experienced all the abuse that we're talking about today. And I drove myself crazy, like researching it. Well, we don't need to research it, right? We don't need to get a PhD in narcissism or abuse. And then the abuser can use it against you too, right? I'm
Mhm.
not really doing that because I do this also, right?
Mhm.
Because as you know, like the abuse goes, it vacillates, right? Kindness, cruelty, and it's very subtle.
Mhm.
So anyway, I just want to just give us in a nutshell. I know it's it was like I forget how long your marriage was, right? But just give us like just the overarching story, your story that you posted on social media that got my attention. I got a lot of attention actually. I remember comments of women saying how brave you were and thanking you. So just give us a little overarching view of what was going on during that time.
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you for having me, Lisa. I'm happy to share. Happy that I'm at a point in my life where I can share. And that was my coming out point
Right.
for sure. Yes, it took a while for me to be able to get there. I was even into my second marriage at that point, which was nothing like the first before I had uncovered enough layers to feel comfortable sharing. Okay, so we were together almost 10 years, 9.5 years. It was basically all of my 20s, and it feels like it's a movie when I reflect back on it, and like it was just a
Mm.
different lifetime. It's just so different. So I believe I was, well, I met him first when I was in high school. I was 17, I believe, and I started taking his yoga class. And so he was 14 years older than I was. Stayed in the yoga class just as a student for a couple sessions, and then I stopped so I could focus on school. And I had a long-term boyfriend in high school. So I wasn't thinking anything about relationship with this person. And then after I graduated, I went back to yoga to the same class because he was such a great yoga instructor. And he was a very good yoga instructor. He was very prominent in the city that we lived in, very well respected, wait lists on all the classes. And we ended up getting together. I guess I had been in the first session I was back, maybe we ended up getting together and I started dating him. So I was 20 and he was 34 at that time. I broke up. There was a bit of a crossover, and I broke up with my long-term high school boyfriend. And very soon after getting together with this person, and we moved in together 6 months later. I moved into his house, and my friend also moved in with us as a roommate. Um, so
Wait, can I stop you for a second?
yeah,
I'm curious to know in those 6 months, what was he like before you moved in with him? What was he like when you were dating him?
yeah. So there were definitely, upon reflection, there were red flags for sure. And I definitely would have shut that down within a week for sure
Mm.
at this point in my life. But at that point, there was no physical abuse. I didn't perceive it as emotional or mental abuse at that time because I was 20, 19, 20. But the flags would have been like, he didn't want me, he wanted me to change the clothes I was wearing, and because they were still like high school clothes,
Mm.
just not, there wasn't anything wrong with them. They were just high school clothes. So he gave me a bunch of money to go shopping and
Mm.
buy new clothes. Yeah.
Which
Um,
to how old were you at the time?
1920.
So a 19, 20, that's my daughter's age, right? Somebody gives her a bunch of money and says, go buy clothes. You
Yeah.
don't even see it.
It
You're like,
was,
oh, new wardrobe. He loves me so much. He wants to buy me new clothes.
yes. And it was like, it was $2,000. It was $2,000 cash he gave me. Yeah.
And that was how long ago? How many years ago?
I'm 39 now. So almost 20 years ago?
Right. So 20 years ago, $2,000. That's like getting the lottery to buy clothes, right?
Yes. Yes. And I was just coming out of school and finishing
Mm-hmm.
went through to be a holistic nutritionist. I was still working on that,
Mm-hmm.
to be a holistic nutritionist. And so that's a lot of money. Like
Did was there any at that time when you were going through it? Because this is what I want to drive home to women. when you're going through abuse, you don't even see it as that. Or when somebody's grooming you, you don't see it because it feels good, right? Like we were saying, it feels amazing. Here's $2,000. Go buy yourself some new clothes, not seeing that the person is actually trying to control you and
Mhm.
change you.
Yes.
Was there any tiny little voice inside, or like a feeling inside your body going, oh, ooh, wait a
Yes.
minute?
Yes. So there's pieces like the element of the clothing example would have
Mhm.
been he also wanted me to then throw out all of my other clothes. And we have
Mhm.
attachments to some of our clothes, right? And some clothes hold memories or are special to us. So there were some things I actually hid and packed away in case he ever found them and what got upset. And I didn't know what potential that had at that time, but
Mhm.
it was feelings like that, like I I'd like to keep some of my clothes,
Mhm.
but I also like to buy new clothes. There
And
were
you instinctively, it sounds like, knew for whatever reason you needed to hide those clothes, that he would not be happy. But did he
yes,
ever say, don't keep any of your clothes? Did he ever say that to you? Or
he
what did he say? Throw out all your clothes?
he said I should throw out all my clothes, but he didn't say I must. But I
Mhm.
think there was this intuitive feeling of,
Right.
but like this is a lot of money he gave me. If he finds out that I kept some of these or we end up moving in together,
Mhm.
and do I have to keep the clothes that I kept at my parents and then just never, and then how do I explain
Mhm.
that? Just all of these almost elements of shame or needing to hide parts of
Mhm.
me, that I just, like you said, it's almost like a grooming and you don't realize it's abuse until it
Mhm.
just blows up.
Right. And that's what I really want to bring awareness to young women who are watching, right? Like I talk a lot about this with my daughter and her friends. And at
Yeah.
first my daughter was like resistant to it. I said, this is true. It's a fine, you don't want to scare women, right? But at the same time, like if you knew the red flag, if somebody had told you back then, right? Then perhaps it'd be a completely different story for you. So I just love that you're actually like saying, oh, I think I need to hide these clothes, but you don't even know why you're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you
Mhm.
just shouldn't. I have goosebumps when I say that. Like it, yeah, I don't
Mhm.
know if I ever really reflect on that piece where I
Mhm.
felt like I had to hide the clothes or if, yeah, anything. It also came up with certain people I wanted to visit, or
Mhm.
he didn't want my parents to visit because they would wear cologne or perfume, and he didn't want the scent in the house.
Mhm.
But then this,
So do
this is
you do you
lady.
do you feel like that was just a cover? Like I don't want the scent in the house, but he was really isolating you, it sounds like, from, which is what they do, right? That's what abusers do. They want to isolate you from your loved ones.
It's hard for me to actually, I feel like so much of what he said he actually believed. He
Mm-hmm.
actually believed it was true, and some of it I know was manipulation and it was
Mm-hmm.
intentional. Now when I look at it after being outside of the relationship for so long, but I also look back at it and I can see where he really believed some of the things he was saying. And
Mm-hmm.
like, he was controlling these would have been other red flags. He liked things done a certain way. He researched it, and this is the best way, this is the most efficient way. So if you want to do it differently, that's just crazy to him. And this would be like the beginning of a fight, um,
Mm-hmm.
where I would internally decide, am I taking this one on or am I letting this go? And just knowing in my head that
Mm-hmm.
there's there's lots of ways of doing things. Um,
Did it cause you to blame, like were you blaming yourself for things if things went wrong, or
I think
was
I
there?
did at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning. Um, at some point in the relationship, I saw what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And not too far into it. I would say 2 or 3 years into it, I
Mm-hmm.
I saw, and it was almost like a not a fun game. It was like a game where I
Mm-hmm.
could tell I knew the next moves. I
Mm-hmm.
knew that I could control the outcome depending on what I said or didn't say,
Mm-hmm.
or what I did and didn't do, or what I hid or chose not to hide. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So
And
I,
that so that happened after you guys moved in because you were with each other for 6 months. And then tell me a little bit about the moving in thing, because a lot of women I talk to that have been in these situations, they really didn't really want to move in with a guy. They felt kind of pressured or guilted or like he was moving too fast. Did any of
Mhm.
that happen for you?
Interesting. Yes. Yes. So I did have this element, but when I moved in with my friend, but it was
Mm-hmm.
his suggestion that we move in and she can help out and it will alleviate cost and things like that. But I mean, he was supporting himself and this whole house anyway, and he had a
Mm-hmm.
successful business. He didn't need to alleviate any cost. Um, I did feel I was excited, but there was pressure to move quickly, and
Mm-hmm.
there was pressure to um, how to share with my parents that I was moving in, like what words to use and how to make them feel more comfortable, because obviously my parents were very resistant about their 20-year-old moving in with a
Mm-hmm.
34-year-old that she
Yeah.
just was dating.
Yeah, like I said, I have a 20-year-old. I can't imagine what I would do if she came to me and said moving in with this 34-year-old.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It was very, everything was very fast. Um, yeah, and then so my friend moved in with us, and the physical abuse didn't start until she moved out 6 months later. So a year into the relationship, she ended up being a buffer, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
A beautiful buffer because we're still friends,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm so happy that we had that time together. But
Did he want her living there with you? Was he okay with that?
yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he seemed to be fine with that. I'm not sure if it was part of the plan that would make it easier for me to move in if I had my friend
Mm-hmm.
living with me. She was going through a life change at that time as well, so it seemed to coincide. Like she was going to
Mm-hmm.
looking for a place to live. So
Mm-hmm.
things sort of felt like it made sense in the logical sense, but like going back to how you said or what you pointed out about the feeling in the body, it didn't feel
Mm-hmm.
like a big like, yes, okay, I'm so ready for this. It felt very like fast, and to a fast moving person, I'm very ambitious, and I
Mm-hmm.
like to get stuff done. I like to make moves in life, and I love change when it's for growth, but this felt fast for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing I hear off so many times. It's just everything was so fast. Was there love bombing too, like in the early stages where, he was like over the top with flattery and praise, well, obviously gifts that
Yeah.
look like a gift was really control though, the
Yeah.
$2,000 for the clothes. Was any of that going on initially?
Yeah, yeah. So there were the clothes, there were dinners out where he spent lots of money on nice meals. We were I was dabbling with vegetarianism. I'm vegetarian now. I was dabbling with vegetarianism then, and he was raw vegan. And so this was another piece that he controlled. He basically told me in a nice way that I needed to be raw vegan. So I had to also, I mean, I felt like it was by choice at the time,
Mm-hmm.
but I changed my entire diet pretty much to raw vegan, um, because also he's very spiritual, right? He's this yoga
Mm-hmm.
prominent person. We had a sprout room where we grew tons of sunflower sprouts, and there was this whole like persona and image on the
Mhm.
outside.
What do you mean when you say he told you in a nice way that you needed to become vegan? Can you go
Yeah.
into a little detail about that? What does that look like?
Yeah, so he didn't tell me I had to do it. What he did instead was he shared documentaries with me. Hey, let's watch this documentary tonight. And it was basically, you're not going to be able to eat meat after you watch this. Like, this is must be what he's thinking, right?
Yeah.
And so, yes, they were traumatizing to watch. And yeah, they were traumatizing to watch. Or he would make food for me, make a
Mm.
salad, and then make two salads, or make two of his raw soups that he used to make, and then say, here, I made this for you. After we eat this, then we can have like this cooked food treat or something like that. And so it was making me, but it was, see how subtle it was? It was like, I've made food for
Mhm.
you, and let's sit and cuddle and watch this together. And let's go out to this really nice vegan restaurant in Toronto. And I'm going to drop $200 on a nice meal for us. Just like things like that, that made me feel uh, that it made sense. And I mean, he's making food for me, and these recipes are here. I don't have to figure out how to eat. So, sure.
Mhm.
But then the problem came in later when I wanted to eat other things, or even just like a cooked meal, and I wasn't allowed to. And it became like an abusive fight.
So what would happen? Describe, because a lot of women watching don't even see it as like what you were saying, right? Like my hope is there's a woman out there watching this going, well, shit, that's what my husband does, or my whoever she's with, my fiance, my boyfriend.
Yeah.
Like I didn't even know, right? Because it like you said, it's so insidious, it's so subtle that you miss the clues because
Yes.
it's veiled in this, it's good for you kind of thing. So when you say like, how did you know that you weren't allowed to eat certain foods then? Like what would happen?
So he would talk so poorly about other food choices, let's say. And I was in school to be a nutritionist also, right? So I
Mhm.
knew a lot of these things. Um, he would talk poorly about it on a regular basis. He would tout it at yoga. Um, and everyone ate it up and thought, because he's like the guru or whatever. But the how I knew I wasn't allowed was when I suggested, hey, I'm going to add this to the grocery list. And
Mhm.
maybe we could have this tonight. I haven't had this in a long time. And maybe it's something like a comfort food or something like that. And he would look at me like I was crazy. Like, why would you do that? And it was just like a body change. Like,
Mhm. See the body. Yeah.
yeah. And it feels like, oh, like, okay, well, you don't have to eat it. I can just make it. Why would you do that to your body? And then he would make me feel so bad about eating it, that I was harming my body so poorly, that I wasn't
Mhm.
going to be able to have kids because it was going to affect my fertility, that I was going to gain weight if I did that, in just because of all the free radical damage, or not because of the quantity or whatever, right? Um, that maybe I would get body odor from it. Maybe I would
Mhm.
be less attractive. Maybe I would snore in my sleep if I mean, we slept in separate bedrooms because that was
Mhm.
another thing too. He wanted to have his own space.
Mhm.
I felt that it was not right to sleep beside someone because your auras cross when you're sleeping.
Oh my.
So yeah, there's just
Yeah.
layers.
And then you said became very abusive fights that would happen.
Yes.
Was it like what would he do in those abusive fights?
Yeah. So I guess it started off in this way. And then I would probably, in the first time that something like this would have happened, I sort of backed off and just said, okay, that's fine. We don't have to get
Mhm.
that. Right. And did this a bunch of times until I felt like, no, I want this. Like, I
Mhm.
want this. And so I decided to stand up and be like, well, that's fine, but I'm going to get it. And this is when an abusive fight would happen. So it would be verbal. And then when he felt like I wasn't going to give in if I chose, and this is where this like game element, this cyclical playing out would happen, I would know at what point I need to stop and pivot or just shush or agree with him. And if I chose not to, I mean, it could be anything from like he could grab my arm, he could, one of the things he would do sometimes is choke me, but he would do it from behind, like in front of me, but put his hand behind so that the marks would be hidden by my hair, hopefully, when there was bruising after. One of the times, which was also a point of discussion afterwards, because I couldn't understand if he could think so clearly to decide where to consciously place his hand to avoid bruise marks being shown. How can you not stop yourself in the fight?
Right. And I love that you said, so a lot of women, this is what I hear, a lot of women will come to me and they'll say, well, he's not really abusive because he just grabbed my arm, or he just pulled my sweatshirt like from behind.
Yeah.
Right. And so I love that you say that, right? That is actually abusive behavior. But again, the point is not late, like in that moment, you're not saying to yourself, I'm being abused, right? That's not the way it happens.
No.
You just know you feel unsafe in your body. You know it's not safe. Yeah. And that's what I tell women is that. So I'm so glad that you brought up that the first thing, like grabbing your arm, that if someone is doing something to your body in any way and you don't feel safe in your body, your main job is not to decide, is this person abusing me, but to get to safety, right?
Yes. Yes.
And like what you were saying, and you're like, sometimes getting to safety is playing the game, like what you're talking about.
Yeah, you can't just end it. I mean, maybe it's different for different people, obviously, but in my experience, I couldn't just decide right after he grabbed my arm to end. I mean, I could say, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean that. And maybe we would be so far into it that he would back down and it would be okay. But if it got further, it kind of has to be, it had to be played out so that it would be believable. So he would think that I had had time to consider, and I really understood that he was right before he would back down. Yeah. And
while you're in it though, like I hate this, and I'm sure you hate this too, when people will say to women, well, why didn't you just leave then at that point, right? No, the question is, why did he do it? Not why isn't she leaving, but why is he doing it in the first place? Yes. Because did you fall into this camp? Nobody wants to believe that a person that they fell in love with, moved in with, is capable of doing this to them.
Yeah. I never told anyone while I was in it for the whole 9.5 years. Whenever it started, I didn't tell anyone. At some point, I started going to therapy because he told me I had an anger problem, and I should go to therapy.
My head's about to explode. This is another. Okay, I'm going to ask the people that are women that are watching, drop in comments if somebody is being abusive to you, you react, right? And then it becomes about your reaction, not about their abusing you. Drop in comments if that's you. Just say, yes, I've experienced this, or whatever you want to say, because this is huge, right? I hear this a lot too. It's your problem, April, because you have anger issues, or we have communication issues. Yes. No, bitch, that's not what's happening here.
You're abusing me. What do you expect the reaction to be?
Right. If you guys are watching this, I want to just drive this home, that if you are being treated in a certain way and you don't feel safe and you then react, it doesn't mean that you're the abuser or you're the one with the anger problem, right? This is the equivalent of it. If you're walking down the street and somebody grabs you and throws you into white van that you hear about, right? And you start kicking and screaming and yelling at this person, right? Is it you that has the anger problem? No, it's the same thing in an abusive situation. It's no different than somebody just grabbing you off the street, throwing you in a van, and you start react. There's a term called reactive abuse. I actually hate that word, reactive abuse, that term. Have you heard that term?
No, no.
So reactive abuse is like the psychological definition of somebody who's being abused and then they react.
Okay. Okay.
Right. I don't like that word because it's can be misconstrued. Oh, now she's abusing me. No, really what it is, it's a defensive reaction.
Yeah, I agree completely.
That
Yeah.
if you're acting out in anger, someone's grabbing your arm, or doing all the things that you talked
Yeah.
about, and you're reacting in anger,
Yeah.
it's a normal reaction.
Yeah. So like
Mhm.
absolutely in this relationship, I would have been considered I would have been a reactive abuser, I guess. But I definitely dug
Mhm.
my nails into him, kicked him, hit him, bit him. I definitely did things, but I was never the person that started it. It was always to get away or defend myself. And yeah,
Right.
I
Defensive
agree.
reaction.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
It feels offensive to have it labeled.
Okay. So I'm super curious. Oh, wow. This is going in a great direction here because I know a lot of therapists, pastors, clergy people who
Mhm.
are not well educated in abuse situations. They will blame the woman. Well, maybe you could be a little nicer. Maybe you could react a little different. So I am really curious, and I'm hoping that your therapy experience was not that. But I'm putting that out there just so people listening know, if you are in an abusive situation, or you just don't feel safe, right? Let's just take the word abuse out. You're just not feeling safe in your relationship. And you go to a therapist, a pastor, any clergy person, anyone in the mental health profession, and they look at you and say, maybe you could just be more forgiving. Maybe you could just be nicer. Maybe you could just not react that way. Work on self-control. Run the other way. Go find yourself a person who is an expert in trauma response, trauma recovery, abuse survivors. That's who you need. So let's hear about your experience with therapy.
Yeah, so my experience with therapy, I didn't tell her, of course, and this was one of the questions she asked me outright was, is there any history of abuse, mental, emotional, or physical? And I said, well, maybe emotional. And I did not say anything else because I figured she might get that from the stories I'm about to share with her, right? So I left out the physical part because I didn't know what would happen and I wasn't ready for our relationship to end. I didn't know
Mhm.
if he would be taken away to jail or what would happen. What would happen? I didn't know. And I was scared to tell a therapist. This is the same reason I didn't tell anyone in my life because I couldn't fathom or comprehend how I could possibly explain what is happening and how I am here and how I'm
Whoa.
going to stay.
Okay, that is huge. I really want people to hear what you just said, right? Because you're in this state of confusion.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
like,
Yes.
where do I even start with what's happening to me?
Yeah.
And the shame too, right? Like
So much. Yes.
that is so key. What's interesting though, and I hear this a lot too, he actually wanted you to go to therapy.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
So you see how that looks though? So a lot of people listening might think, well, if he wanted her to go to therapy, he couldn't possibly have really been abusing her because he'd get caught because she's going to go to the therapist and tell the therapist.
Yeah. So he would tell me that we were working on our shadows together and that this was ancestral healing and that when these fights came up, it was lifetimes ago that we were healing and that we were going to do it together and we were meant to be here together. And this is what I mean by like, and I believe that he believed this, like he actually believed that.
Mhm.
And that's probably why he felt safe ushering me towards a therapist.
Right. And did you think that you actually had an anger problem? You
No, I
knew.
didn't. No. And
Mhm.
but I welcomed the idea of therapy because I was confused and I couldn't understand how to navigate or what to do. And I felt that I might be able to get some tools, even if I didn't give the whole picture, I might be able to get some tools to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what I did. And I told her that I was there because he said I have an anger problem, and she said, "Do you believe you have an anger problem?" And I said, "No, I don't." And she said, "Okay, why don't you tell me what's happening?" And so I told her
Wow.
full detail, kind of what was happening, and she gave me. We went through like I don't know, different like division of the home and like equality with chores and like very kind of what I would consider surface level things for somebody who's
Mm-hmm.
going through abuse. But she didn't know the depth of it. We talked about communication and how to talk about statements in terms of, I feel this way when this happens, so that you're not projecting on someone or inviting them into a defensive situation. Just for
Was it
like,
what? So this is her, what she said after you told her about the abuse that was happening?
yes, but I was surface level with the abuse. So I
You were
would,
surface level.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So was it helpful at all? It doesn't sound
It was
the
a
way you're
little,
saying.
it was a little helpful.
Mhm.
I used the communication tools. I even shared those with him, and he would work on that with me, and we would work on
Mhm.
the communicate, like words communicating. Um, but the rest, it just didn't touch anything else because it, like, let's be honest, this wasn't the big problem. The big problem was that I was scared and didn't know what to
Mhm.
do. And he would tell me all the time that if I left, I would never find anyone else that was like him in a good way. Yes. And I would
Drop
never.
in, drop in comments if any guy's ever told you that. Maybe you're in a situation right now where he's saying, "You'll never find anyone like me." Were you financially dependent upon him?
I would say I was working part-time.
Mhm.
And yeah, he was the breadwinner. Um, yeah, yeah, I was financially dependent upon him. We had a weird split in the finances that I didn't let, like, he would pay me more money once I was living there. He would pay me money to clean the house as though I was the cleaner to help me pay off my debt instead of just being a couple and sharing expenses.
So there
So
was financial abuse happening too.
yeah, I didn't have much
Mhm.
money left over on my part-time income. Once I was done sharing in the half of the mortgage and all the stuff that he was like, heat, hydro, groceries, all this stuff. Yeah, I didn't really have much to work with.
Are you still living in the aftermath of an abusive relationship, abusive marriage, friendship, an abusive employer? Are you still getting triggered just like April is at the smallest little thing? Triggers you, derails you, causes a visceral reaction in your body like it did for her on the episode? Then join my monthly healing group so that we can heal you from all of that abuse that happened. So you no longer live from trigger to trigger. You learn to heal your mind, body, and soul one trigger at a time. Click the link below to apply for my monthly healing group to heal from abuse now. So did he ever go to therapy? Or did you do couples therapy?
Oh, you just reminded me. But wait, before I keep wanting to go back to this one thing before I forget, because I think it's
Okay.
important. With the arm grabbing, it starts like that. And I think there's value in noticing that if you allow it and if you make it okay and reason with it, like I did, and like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
he was just frustrated and he apologized and
Mm-hmm.
we're good now. it's almost like a pass that it can escalate. And this seemed to be what happened with us. So for a while, it was smaller things. And then, like, I've been knocked unconscious a couple of times from head injuries from him, and
Mm.
just and not allowed to go to the hospital because we know what would happen, right? Um, so I think I just want to go back to that I think it's important to notice that it starts like that, and maybe it never progresses, and it doesn't matter if it never progresses, and that's as bad as it gets. It's bad enough. And I wish I had left at that point or before.
Wow, I love that you're sharing all of this. The
Yeah.
progression,
Yes.
because you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. Like it started up here, right? Started with like your mind and your soul. He was kind of psychologically, emotionally. It's so much a progression. So I
Yes.
love that you're saying that, because if you're absolutely right, if they do it once, what's going to happen next time?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. If they've
Mhm.
apologized it away and done the swooning, and which is totally what we did. My daughter was just coughing. I just wanted to make sure she wasn't
Is she
choking.
okay?
Yeah, she's good. Um, this like the yeah, just this the love bombing that you were talking about. It was totally the
Mhm.
cycle of I'm so sorry. Like my grandfather was really abusive, and it's sometimes it comes out, and you don't deserve this, and all of this lovely things. And then
Mhm.
3 days later, a week later, and the longer in between, it was worse. So if we went a month without any physical abuse, then when I felt it coming, I knew it was going to be bad, because
Mhm.
underneath it all was, you made me do this, and we were doing so well, not fighting.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's the blame. Like
Yeah.
blaming you. It's your fault. And then turning himself into the victim. Would you
Yes.
say that? Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
that's really common.
Yeah. I'll go back to the therapy question if that's,
Yeah, go
yeah.
ahead.
Yeah. So finally, Um, I got us into couples therapy. I don't remember if he suggested it or I did or my therapist suggested it. We
Mhm.
went with a different therapist than was my personal one, so she was impartial. And it was one of the most embarrassing experiences of my life. I sat silent almost the whole time because I was in shock at what he was saying and how he was saying it. And like, embarrassed for him and embarrassed for me because it was so blatantly obvious. He was even verbally attacking, I would say, the therapist and telling her
Mhm.
that she was, well, how many years of school have you had? Because if you knew, then you would know that this and this, just like, oh, I was so ashamed that I was in that room with it.
Mhm.
I was,
I've heard that so many times. In fact, couples therapy is one of the worst things you can do with an abusive person,
oh my gosh.
because of that reason.
Yes,
Yes.
it was awful. And then in the car
Mhm.
afterwards, I was quiet for a bit, and he brought it up and thought that I was going to agree with him as to how it went. And I just looked at him and I said, I do not feel the same way. I am really embarrassed right now by the way you acted. And of course, this didn't go so great, but
Mhm.
I couldn't.
Mhm.
I was shocked at how poorly he handled himself.
Did you keep going back after that?
No, no, that was a one and done. No, it's bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that many times from many women, that it's not, when I tell women, if they don't feel safe with their partner, like don't go to therapy for yourself. Don't go with him just yet.
No,
Maybe in a time you can, right? But I can't stress this enough. If you are feeling unsafe, like the major thing is to get yourself to safety, right? So you said that you stayed in this. Was it this, just like what you're describing, for 9.5 years? And
no,
during that, no? Okay, go
no.
ahead.
So we broke up at one point. I broke up with him um, in 2009, 2008, 2009. And I lived in an apartment by myself, but we were still casually seeing each other.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't really a breakup. When my lease agreement was coming up, he figured I'll skip ahead over some details. He basically convinced me that things were going to be different. We were going to try for a family, and he did want to get married, and we could get married next year, and we could buy property up north to build the house that we wanted to build. And these, because I'm the ambitious, like, what are we doing? Like, let's move
Mm-hmm.
on stuff. He knew that these were things that I was upset with and dissatisfied with. And so he used those to pull me in. So
Mm-hmm.
January 2010, we bought property up north, acreage, 121 acres in Northern Ontario. And March, we got married the same year. And that year, we built the house while he went up back and forth while he was teaching. And we worked on building the house. And then the following May, we moved into that house. In the last year we were together, I would say, the violent episodes became more spread out, which led me to believe for some reason that he was improving. And I
Mm-hmm.
could see longer stretches that he was able to work through these issues that he had. And eventually, in the summer after we moved in, it was August 5th of 2013 was the last physical fight we had. And when it started, I was ready to go into it. It
Mm-hmm.
sounds weird to talk about that way, but I felt it. I wanted to stand my ground, and I did. And there was abuse. And as the fight was happening, as the violence was happening, I was planning how much time I needed to prepare to leave and what things I needed to get in order. And I needed to get a separate bank account because it was done. It was like a switch just flicked and I was
Wow.
done. And so it was September 25th that I came down for a wedding the weekend of the 12th, 13th in the area where we were living. Um, Not the new house, but the city. And I told my close two friends, and my parents that I was leaving and I'd be coming down on the weekend of the 25th, and to expect me, but not to say anything to him. And so I left. It was all like had to be very planned. And I had to, yeah, I tried to leave on the Saturday of that weekend, and he caught me in the car, which just means like he he followed me in his car and blocked
Mm-hmm.
me in on a side road, so I couldn't get out. And like up north in Northern Ontario, it's all like bush at the side of the road, so you can't just like drive into the
Oh.
bush and come out, right? So
Mm-hmm.
my only option was to just wait, um, and call the police, or I could apologize. Actually, he was apologetic then. I had the upper hand then because he was apologizing. Like, come back. I'm so sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I understand. Let me make you dinner. We'll even get subs because that's cooked food. We'll go to Subway and get
Did you
subs.
ever call the police before that?
I
Was there
never,
ever a point? Never. Yeah.
never, never.
Mm-hmm.
Even when we filed for divorce, I didn't include abuse as the reason because I knew it would be harder to get out. Because there was an
Wow.
option. You can make your, I believe this is true, but don't quote me on this, but from what I
Mm-hmm.
remember, I think there was an option where you can make the marriage null and void, if abuse is the reason that you're leaving. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't, because he wouldn't allow that to be on paper, I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you finally did actually get
Yeah.
away the way what you were just describing.
Yeah.
You had to stay with your family and friends. Is that what you did?
Yeah, I played this game. This was the Saturday. I played the game and I went
Mm-hmm.
back and I let him give me dinner. And I messaged my dad, I think, to let him know that I'd be coming the next day. And at this point, they don't know about the abuse. They just
They
know that
still
they're
didn't
not
know.
here. No.
Mm-hmm.
So I messaged them to let them know I'd be coming the next day and put my phone away for the night, let him be all swoony. And I told myself when I went to bed, because he wanted me to sleep with him that night, because we were like reconnecting and being intimate, which was totally not happening.
Mm-hmm.
But I played into the whole thing, and I told myself when I fell asleep that I would be waking up at 5, wake me up at 5 to my internal clock, because I knew he would sleep in. Yeah. And I woke up at 5 and my car was still packed. That was one of the contingencies. He said, you can even leave all your stuff in the car. It's okay. Like, I don't, you can leave your
Mm-hmm.
work computer and all that stuff, because I was working from home.
Wow.
You can leave it all there. And I said, okay. And in my head, I'm like, that's great, because I'm out of here in the morning. So um, we I woke up, I left a little note. I think I said, I'm sorry, bye, and left it at the front door. And I sped my way down the highway. And he called me a couple hours later and was like, what happened? Where are you? And he was panicking. And it with somebody like this, and when you're done, you can't answer. There's no
Mm-hmm.
answer. The answer is, I'm done and I don't have anything else to say. Please don't call me.
Mm-hmm.
And you stop picking up the phone.
Mm-hmm. And then you filed for divorce.
Yes.
Was
Well,
that an ugly divorce?
it wasn't ugly because I let a lot go. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I had to give some time there for him to come to terms with what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed it to be amicable. And then you have to separate first in Ontario for a year, I think, before you're allowed to divorce unless there's
Mm-hmm.
abuse. So we did the separation agreement and we went to the courthouse together, which was super fun. And we sat there together and did that a couple times because we forgot something or had to fix something and go back a second time. And got that submitted. And I basically got, so we have this big property up north, 120 acres, and we had built a big 4-bedroom house up there. And I walked away with $20,000.
Wow.
Yeah. And not even cat. It was in the form of what
Mm-hmm.
he had some precious metals that were
Mm-hmm.
at that time valued at 20 grand. Um, and that's what I was offered. So
Yeah.
I said, okay. And I took it. And that was it. But there are many thousands of dollars that I just left.
Mm-hmm.
I did go up there with friends and family on a day that I knew he was down in the city teaching, to go into, we had a big metal barn where we kept a lot of our stuff that we hadn't moved into the
Mm-hmm.
house yet. And I had sentimental things in there. And um, he had, uh, while we were there, his dad had the property next to us and he heard that I was there. And he changed the lock on the barn while I
Mm-hmm.
was up in the house I
Of
said, I'm
course
just
he did.
my clothes. Yeah. So he like scrambled to go get that changed. And when we went down to the barn, like, I can't get in. My key doesn't work. And so thankfully, one of my friend's husbands came down with us and he said, I saw a grinder saw up in the house. Do you have a battery, like a handheld battery pack? And I said, yes. So we cut the lock. I got my stuff out
Wow.
with the things I could get into our small little U-Haul trailer. And that was it. And so the separation didn't happen until after that still, because I knew he was going to need time to settle down on that one. Yeah, but then when the divorce came, he didn't want anything. He wanted me to not have his last name. He wanted like to cut all ties with me.
Mm-hmm.
So he was happy to get that done.
Of course he did, because he's worried what you're doing now,
Yeah,
right? Telling your story.
Yes.
what you did, like coming
Yeah.
out and telling your
I can't
story.
find him either. He's dropped. I can't find him. I
I'm
can't find
not sure.
him with a business. I don't know where he is.
And through this whole time, though, he has this, which is very usual when it comes to an abuser. They have this facade, this mask, right? He's this
Mhm.
yogi, this yoga teacher who's peaceful and all, right? And
Yeah.
so nobody probably would have believed you, maybe, right? Like his followers and stuff.
Yes. Yes.
Like,
They would
no
have just
way,
been,
him?
there's
You're
no
kidding
way.
me.
Yeah.
Right. So that's an important thing that I want out there also, is that an abuser, that word again sounds like some kind of scary, creepy looking guy, right? Some kind
Yeah.
of like,
Yeah.
ogre looking guy. No, they're charming.
Yes.
They are, they're
Yes.
women's advocates, right? They're yoga teachers. They're
Yes.
all about peace and harmony and love.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so that messes with women's minds, right? When they're in this situation, well, he didn't really mean to grab my arm, or that's not really controlling, or he can't possibly be that because he's a yoga teacher. He's a
Yeah.
world-renowned yoga teacher. He can't possibly be emotionally abusing me or psychologically abusing me.
Yes.
They,
Yes.
they,
It's
that
so hard
they,
to reconcile
yes.
mentally when you're in it. It's
Mm-hmm.
so confusing. There's so much back and forth of, well, okay, I guess, yeah, I mean, it was just an arm grab, and he does have this family
Mm-hmm.
history, so I guess
We excuse it away.
let go. Yeah. But then it
Yeah.
just so far. And then I really also wanted a
Mm-hmm.
family. And
Mm-hmm.
I ended up getting together with my husband that I had Aurora with, my daughter with. I left in September, and we worked together, her dad
Mm-hmm.
and I, and we're just work friends for since we work together. And I think it was the next month, October. He said, I know it's probably really recent, but if you're ever interested, I would love to go. And so we had a baby within 2 years of knowing each
Mm-hmm.
other. Like, it was all just so, like, such a brainwashing, like, anything can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Anything can happen. Like, it doesn't matter what they're threatening you with. It doesn't.
Brainwashing.
Yes.
That is key right there. It's the brainwashing. People say, what? And I'm really proud of you. Like, I hope you are so proud of yourself.
I am.
It's
Thank you.
unusual. Yeah. And it's unusual too. I don't know if you've ever read the statistics. It usually is 7 times a woman will leave an abusive man before they finally leave forever. 7
Wow.
times. That's,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, like, I moved out that one time, and that was what I consider leaving.
Mm-hmm.
But there were times where I don't really consider this leaving, though. I would leave in the middle of the night for a night and
Mm-hmm.
come back. But I knew it wasn't done. I was just mad. It's like going to
Mm-hmm.
your parents to cool off or something,
Mm-hmm.
Except you're locked out of the house and it's winter and you have socks on and you walk in the snow to the gas station and call your
Yeah.
dad. Pick you up.
Yeah. Did you ever see that series Made?
No. Do I
It's
need to
it's
do this?
yeah, it's a great show because it's all about what we're talking about today and how you don't see yourself in it. And yeah, I started that show and I couldn't stop it. Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing I want to bring up is how, so you're talking about this and I'm not sensing a lot of emotion or anything.
Mhm.
So I'm saying this because, like, I know there's this distance and a lot of healing, and I know I've been in groups with you.
Yeah.
A lot of women are criticized for this. Have you ever seen this? Women, like rape cases, right? They're on trial and they're saying she didn't really get raped or she wasn't really abused. Listen, she's not even getting emotional talking about it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I'm curious to know, when you are talking about it, like, do you feel like you are healed from it? Like, that's usually what I say when, like, stuff that I've been through, I can rattle it off like a cupcake recipe, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm healed from that experience. I've healed, I've grown, evolved. And
Yeah.
so I want to put that out there. I don't want people being like, I don't want people to look at you and say, well, she's not even emotional about it. So let's just address it right now. If any of you
Yeah.
people are out there watching, thinking, because I know the way people think, I hear stuff like this, right? So just talk a little bit about the healing process that went on, and how is it you're able to now say this without crumbling, without breaking down, right? Some of the stuff you talked about, really serious stuff.
Really serious. Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like I haven't even scratched the surface of details.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's two things here going on. So when I left, I did get into a relationship fairly soon after. And I know that I needed to not think about it. And so I cut it off. I cut off the emotions. I didn't address them. I just kind of wrapped it all up, and I dealt with it when I had to talk to him. And I would get upset in those moments, but I didn't go to therapy right after, which I recommend doing if you can. I didn't do those things right after. I just wanted to check out and have fun in my life and see what people are listening to for music and what movies they're watching, because all of this was controlled. And go get a pizza, drink wine. It was just like, I just needed to be myself, and I wanted to pretend it didn't happen. So there was that phase. And then I started, probably a couple years later, I started peeling back the trauma pieces. And I did go to therapy for post-traumatic stress disorder and trauma. It was a long process. I have healed a lot of components. For many years, if I bumped my head on something, I think I may have told you this, Lisa, but like getting out of the car, you know how sometimes you miss and you bump the top of your head, or like a cupboard door, instant flashback, tears, instant, like I felt like I had been punched in the head again.
So this is important, what you're saying right now. I want people to really understand this is PTSD.
Yes.
People are always asking me, well, I don't know what it is. What you're describing right here is a great description of PTSD.
Yes. Yeah. So I don't have that piece anymore. And that was maybe a couple of years ago, around the time where I came out with my story. When I actually stopped through, journaling, hypnosis, therapy, somatic tools, like feeling in my body, getting more in touch, allowing myself to cry, writing letters to myself and to him that I never send. Lots of unpacking and peeling back layers and uncomfortable emotions.
So it's a process.
Yes, it's a process. And I would say to this day, there's a lot I can share where I don't get emotional because I am healed from it. But there are some things. I was just chatting with someone today she was talking about those Tupperware containers that you put in your fridge. They're fridge smart containers, and they keep your food fresh. And she loves them. And instantly it was like, oh, no, not those containers. Because our fridge, he had researched, and those containers were in our fridge. And I feel like I can't buy them, because even if they're good for my produce, I can't. It's a piece that seems so silly and so trivial, but I want nothing to do with those containers. I also nothing to do with Eckhart Tolle, the beautiful author that does a lot of lovely work. My abuser would play his audiobook while we were in, like, after a fight, to help me calm down and make me listen to it so I could get back in the present moment. And I still feel rage about this poor author. And it just hasn't, it's still there.
I can't thank you enough for sharing all of what you just shared, seriously, because like even when you say it's so silly, it's not silly though.
Yes.
Right. That's a trigger, right? That's a trigger that's still there. Like you said, it's a clue. Maybe a little more healing is needed. Or maybe it's like, it's also okay to never want to buy those again.
Yes.
Right. Like, there's so many different choices. There's a lot of different authors out there too, right? He's for someone else. So just like allowing yourself to say, okay, and how do you, I'm big on like, where do you, like, getting out of your mind and in your body. So I'm just curious, when you see those containers or hear Eckhart Tolle, where do you feel it in your body? Like, how do you know it's this feeling? Like,
It's my
where do you
heart
feel?
rate speeds up and I get sweaty. Like it's right now. I'm not, my
Mhm.
heart rate is fine, but
Right
it
now.
did when I was explaining it and I'm sweaty.
So we decided to end this particular episode right here. As you can see, April was getting triggered by those containers that she was talking about in Eckhart Tolle from the abuse from her first husband. And I decided, hey, let's do an impromptu healing because I didn't want to send her off in the world and the interview with that still weighing heavy on her heart. So stay tuned for part 2, where you get to see April go from a very intense trigger that she carried with her through her 10 years of an abusive marriage and then 10 years after. So she's carried this trigger with her for almost 20 years, right? She still was having a visceral reaction to it. And you're going to see April go from this trigger haunting her to a place of peace within 20 minutes, I think, 15, 20 minutes. So this is for the woman. If you have been carrying around triggers with you and you think there's no way you can heal from it, stay tuned for part 2 and watch April actually heal a 20-year trigger and get herself to a place of peace for the first time in 20 years over this trigger. I cannot wait. And if you're wondering why my background and everything looks so barren, it's because I have a new studio and I don't know what to do with it yet. So if you have any suggestions, go ahead and drop in comments what those are and what you'd like to see behind me. I had the I ams behind me before and the big faith banner and my I am mat. I know you can see some of it's over there. You can't really see it. Anyway, if you have any suggestions, I'd love to hear it because I have a blank canvas. There's nothing better than a fresh start, a blank canvas, right? So stay tuned for part 2. And remember, you are worth it.